that for you. Thank you so much for your attendance tonight. And we're going to get started. So today I want to talk about the celebrations that are surrounded around foods within the Bible. So in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, there were feasts, and these Hebrew feasts, they were typically attached to something that was going on, like in the environment. So it could be a harvest. A lot of times we saw in the Old Testament that they would celebrate after a victory in a battle or some military victory. They would celebrate then. They would have different feasts for different or the particular harvests that they had. But today I want to touch on feasting, and I want to talk about feasting and you know, sometimes, or what we've been talking about most of this series is about like curbing your appetite and not going overboard. But today I want to talk about feasting because God did allow for people to feast, and everyone said,
Amen.
All right, so feasting, to be able to eat more than your normal share. I believe that there's a thin line between feasting and gluttony. Some people live their life to where everything is a feast. Everything, they eat a lot of it and they overconsume. And we know that that's not good. And I've touched on that. But why does God allow us sometimes to celebrate with food?
Brings people together.
Okay, because say it again, sister.
It brings people together.
Oh, very good. Food brings people together, right? Nothing more, nothing better than, something cooking on the grill. Even if I know that in our little neighborhood, there was a party that was going on the other night. I don't know if it was a birthday party, but everyone was out in the front lawn. They had a piñata, they had, music, they had like a little mariachi group that was playing there, and there was food that was cooking. And like Sister Karen said, that food has a way of bringing people together. Why else food? Why else food?
It was part of the Apostles' doctrine as well.
Yeah, so a fellowship of breaking bread together. The apostles, when the church was started, that was one of the things that was noted that they did. And if it was insignificant, I don't think it would have been noted, right? So I think it was important for them to be able to share in that together. It was part of the apostles' doctrines that the apostles shared in food. They ate together, and that was part of a celebration, a part of their ritual. Okay, anyone else? What about foods? Anyone have anything on foods? Yes?
It brings joy. Like, it's not just for the people, it's for those who are homeless, those who need it. It's life. It brings eternity and worship around it.
All right, that's a good. I like how you describe that because, like I've been saying, there's a spirit that's within food.
Right.
Now, if we overindulge, then to overindulge is to be wasteful, is to be gluttonous. But to be able to use it in that way to kind of lift the spirits. I know that, have you ever heard of, it's going to come to me, and it's old age. What is it? Aromatherapy. Anybody ever heard of aromatherapy?
Yeah.
Right, so, yes ma'am, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you sit down and eat a meal, the food reminds you of previous thoughts. It reminds you of family and home and hearth. So therefore, when you eat foods, it reminds you of your life, and you get to rejoice in that life that you've had and everything that you get. To this day, I still am sitting there trying to perfect my mother's white hot dish. I cannot get it right. I have been trying for 10 years now.
What was the dish called?
White hot dish. It's
White
like,
hot
it's like
dish.
hamburger helper, homemade.
Oh, okay,
It's
right.
goulash, but
Right.
And I can't do it. And every time I try to eat it, I'm trying to bring back that sense of family because I can't be with my mother right now. I can't be with my children. And to me, that's something that reminds me of family and of togetherness, And I want that feeling of family even when I'm far away. And food will give that to me if I just get it right.
All right, so would you say you agree with the
Oh, yeah.
saying, right?
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
I know that like when she had mentioned that, like some of the foods I can remember, like when there's certain foods that are cooking, it brings a certain memory. Like, I'm not a big breakfast eater, but I remember, like, on the weekends, that was the time that we had a lot of breakfast, and I can remember the smell of that, and that was a pleasant time within my life. So, you know, sometimes we've given food a little bit of a bad rap, and I want to make sure that we're not making it all negative, because there is a reason for feasting. There is a reason why foods, it can kind of lift your spirits. Yes, sir?
I was just going to say it's a symbol of God's abundance as well.
Oh, very good. It's a symbol of God's abundance. Think of the pomegranate tree. You have one pomegranate seed creates one tree that produces how many seeds? Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of seeds off of that. And just like our brother Adam said, it shows the abundance of God. Like, God could multiply this stuff over and over again, and He can feed us with the food that He brings right from the earth. Yes?
I feel like there's a symbiotic relationship with food and people, because if you like look at how a bee and a flower is, you know, the
Yes.
flower produces, you know, energy, and the bee is feasting on it. But
Yeah.
not only does the bee support and worship the flower, it loves it. So I feel like when people see food, not only do we love it, we cherish it to the moment. Because if you're hungry, we're the bee, we're coming through the flower, we're worshiping it. We're like, hey, I'm hungry. And the food is just like that internal happiness where we can just level out. And then Mother Nature is just like levels everything out.
Interesting way to put that. You know, that
Symbiotic.
sometimes I like to look at, like, even deeper, like, what does the bee do? The bee brings pollination to the flower. I mean, there are edible flowers. Anybody eaten flowers before? When we would grow squash, some of the best part, like the squash flowers, you cut the flowers off and eat them. Yeah. All right, Sister Karen, and then I'm going to go to you, Sister.
I could be at home at my table eating on my own, and I have the portrait of the Last Supper,
Right?
and I look up at it, and right away automatically I think of Jesus, of what was taking place at that moment on
Right.
the table when He was around His disciples, breaking the bread and the wine, and I think of what He's done for me, you know?
Praise God. Yeah. So communion.
Yeah.
To think about, like, what that feast, or what that was symbolic of, and why that brings us back to Calvary, and it brings us back to Jesus, and it brings us back to the sacrifice that He made. Very good. Yes, ma'am, and we're going to go to Scripture. Yeah.
What about the fact that food reminds us of God's plan, God's puzzle? Because, like she said, the bee populates
Right.
the flowers,
Yeah.
makes the honey. We eat the honey, it nourishes our body.
Yeah.
Our body returns to the earth and nourishes the flower. And that's God's plan for every one of us.
Yeah.
Is to be part of this bigger circle of how we can look and see how every piece has purpose. And without the bees, we wouldn't have flowers anymore, we wouldn't have honey anymore, and look at how it would affect our ecosystem.
Right.
God made that. God knew that's a very complex plan that He's come up with that we should not doubt, because if we took one piece away, it would devastate us.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, let's just even look at, I like that. I like how we're getting deep on it. Think of, like, the periodic table. Think of, like, all of the nutrients, and there's minerals, and there are vitamins in different foods, and there are vitamins in specific foods, and then there's a transit time of, like, when a plant becomes edible, and all of this stuff that we look at, like how our body needs certain nutrients to be able to operate at a high level. But if we just go through and we study the foods, we can find out which foods, what we're deficient in, and we can match a food to that. And if we balance off that deficiency by eating something, then it can really change. It can change the way that we look at food, and it gives us a cause and a reason to actually celebrate the food, and to celebrate, like, wow, this is a great thing. I look at, like, like the esoteric thought of food, that, like, it's not just stuff that, in America we say we throw away more food than we actually consume. But when we look at, like, the gift that we have, that God gave us of food, maybe we wouldn't waste it as much. Okay, so first verse we're going to read is in Exodus chapter 23. And and this is a first fruits celebration. So celebrating the first fruit. Pastor James, will you grab, will you grab the bags over there? And if you could get us a plate, if you could just get a plate, and I'll tell you, it'll be self-explanatory when you see what's in the bag. All right, so if someone's got that, if you'll read that, Exodus 23:16.
Hey, I'll go get a plate. One second.
All right, yes, sir.
In the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, when the feast has been gathering at the end of the year, when you have gathered in the fruit of your labors from the field.
All right, so all in one verse talking about a couple of different occasions to feast. Now, everyone say labor.
Labor.
Now, there's a connection between labor and food, right? That the more energy you expend, what is the energy that you're expending? The energy you're expending comes from the foods that you're eating, right? And as we eat some, and as Adam talked about the abundance of God to be able to look at like what he can produce from one crop or from one field or from one tree. But think about this, that the work that we produce in order to bring forth the harvest for our labor, for the benefit of, like, you know, if some of you have had a garden, you think about having a garden is, you know, would you say that gardening, well, gardening could be easy, but how do you say that gardening does not require work? There's nobody who would say, well, gardening doesn't require work.
So many people who have never had a garden.
Yeah, there you go. So when we look at like the work of gardening, there's work that needs to be done to the soil, right? There's work that needs to be done as far as like protecting that plant. There's work that needs to be done in making sure that plant lives to its full potential. So there's pesticides, there's ways to stop diseases from coming into the plant. Yes?
You know, it's so funny. I just had an analogy. Everybody has a garden. Everybody's a seed. So as much as we drop our energy, it's like if I were to tell you, hey, I believe in God,
Yeah.
to an atheist, they have like a desert field, right? I have a plant. If I were
Right.
to say it, and if I were to bring my garden to them and be like, hey, this is what I believe in, it's like you're fertilizing.
Right? Yeah, you know, and then
Spreading love.
yeah, then, you know, a lot of times in the funeral, I did a funeral this week, and you know, famously, that most funerals have the scripture that says, you know, from the dust which you'll return back to the dust in which you came. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So as we are eating, we are burning off the calories of the produced from the food, but there is a harvest for our work. Everyone say work.
Work.
So work, labor, whatever we had to put in now. These days, a lot of times our work and our labor is just the money that we pay someone else to do the gardening. Most things that the store sells, you could grow on your own. Are you aware of that? You could grow most of what they're selling you, but the inconvenience of taking care of a garden or taking care of a field. Some of you might live in an apartment. Some of you might live in a place where you can't have a garden to where you can grow everything that you want to eat. But it is possible to have that. So when we have a harvest of something, sometimes it's good to celebrate. So tonight, we're celebrating the harvest of strawberries. So, did you get that ready?
You want a plate for each person?
No, just put them all up. Put as many as you can on a plate, and they can share from. So Pastor James is going to prepare that for us. But everyone is going to get some strawberries. Why? They're great harvest. A lot of them are in the stores these days, right? A lot of our strawberries likely are coming from. Now on the packaging there, does it say where those were grown at? On the front label, does it say
California.
California? So good old state of California. Oxnard?
Watsonville.
Watsonville, California. Straight up, that's Northern California. Yep, so we look at so there was a good harvest in Watsonville. So in Phoenix, Arizona, what are we doing? We're enjoying the harvest of what God did in Watsonville. We're celebrating what those farmers did and what the people that did to prepare everything were able to do to be able to bring us these beautiful strawberries. Now, in bringing us the strawberries, what is our, what's our cost of the strawberries? Your cost is nothing. But I probably bought $20-some in strawberries tonight. Now, I pray that $20-some is going to trickle down, and hopefully it'll get down to the people that are actually being paid to labor in the fields. Why? The strawberries pretty good?
I wish I knew.
Very good. All right. So no, I'm good. Thank you. Okay. All right. Celebrate the feast of the ingathering at the end of the year when you gather in the crops from your field. So they said at the first fruits. Think about this. They celebrated with foods where they got their first fruits. Anyone explain first fruits to us? Does anyone have a good definition for first fruits? Yes.
Planting a garden. If you are planting carrots, the first fruits of your labor is when you go out and you weed those carrots so that they're a certain distance apart. You get those little carrots in between. That's the first fruits of your labor because you had to go out and weed it out.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't eat them.
So, all right. So here's I'll give you a shorter version of what you said. It's the first harvest.
Amen.
So the first fruits are the first harvest. It's the first ones. If you have certain types of trees, a lot of the nut trees, they'll have a first harvest. Now, if you are really familiar with this, a lot of times, and you pointed this out, so very good looking out with that. A lot of times, your first harvest is not what's going to go to the market because you get irregular stuff in your first harvest. Sometimes you get some of the stuff that's a little oblong. Sometimes I know that when I planted citrus, I've had a citrus tree, and the first harvest of the citrus tree, all of the citrus had a bunch of seeds in it, or all the citrus came out sort of small. But like the second, the third harvest, they get better and better as they go. But every season, the first fruits or the first harvest, it was spoken of, and we're just going to go into a quick definition of tithing. First fruits. We collect our money, whatever it is that we do, if it's to get a check, if it's from your labor, someone worked so you would get some sort of money. So once you've got that money, there's a certain portion of it that the Bible instructs for us to take care of, or it's the tithe. Now, I'm not talking about that as a concept, but I'm talking about it as just a method of measurement. So the first fruits, those were that was the first part of the harvest. They said, celebrate. Now, even though those first fruits might not be the best ones to eat, even though the first fruits might not be the best of the harvest, what are we supposed to do when we receive that? Is to make some sort of level of celebration. Amen? Celebrate that. A lot of times our efforts, we don't celebrate until the very end of something, but God gives us opportunity to be able to celebrate at different times, and with the celebration that He gave, or He endorsed, He allowed it to be okay to celebrate with food. Now, everyone say special occasions.
Okay.
So I believe it's okay to celebrate with foods on special occasions. Now, every day is not a special occasion. Am I right?
Right.
I told you it's okay to eat birthday cake on whose birthday? Your birthday. It's not good to eat birthday cake on everybody else's birthday because eventually you're gonna pick up some of the characteristics of eating too much cake, right? But if you eat it during your birthday, then it's okay. I don't see anything wrong with it. But when we become repetitive with anything, what do we have the likelihood to develop?
Diabetes.
Diabetes. But what comes before diabetes? Habit. Habit. To where a person just can't stop. I can't stop. I have to have my sugar. I have to have my whatever. And when we say things like that, what are those statements of? Those are statements of dependency. It's like a drunk says, I need to have my beer. every day after work. But if I wanted to, I could stop anytime. They're lying. They're dependent upon that. And by over-consuming, what happened? They developed a bad habit. Now, our sister said, what can happen? What happens when we develop bad food habits? Everyone say disease. Yeah. Too much foods, it just produces, you manifest the disease within your body. So I can say that like the wrong type of foods manifest disease. How about attitudes?
Yeah.
The wrong type of attitude will manifest a disease. If you are a negative person and you speak negatively all the time, if you're young or if you're old, don't be surprised that you don't manifest a disease within your body. Because it's the same thing if you eat if you have a habit. So, all right, everyone turn to Genesis chapter 26. And I'm going to read this one. Genesis chapter 26. Yep, Genesis 26. And I'm going to start with verse 28. And this is just story of Isaac and Abimelech. And there's a portion here to where they talk about a celebration. So let's go down to verse 28. Then he answered, we saw clearly that the Lord was with you. So we said, there ought to be a sworn government agreement between us and you. Let us make a treaty with you that you will do us no harm, just as we did not harm you, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully, and now you are blessed by the Lord. Verse 30. Isaac then made a feast for them, and they ate and drank. Early the next morning, the men swore on the oath to each other. Then Isaac sent them on their way, and they went away peacefully. Now, I told you about when it came to war, or when it came between physical or domestic disputes, governmental disputes. We see what's happening in places in the world like Syria right now. You've got you've got like years and years of conflict between people. Now in some parts it's all-out war. But could you imagine if that war ended and they ended it and said, okay, we're going to come up with a treaty, we're going to come up with an agreement, and what we're going to do is everybody's just going to sit down at one table and we're going to feast and we're going to celebrate just peacefulness. Now, it doesn't happen very often within life. But, we should always be looking to broker peace. And one of the things that we can use to help to broker peace is good food. Good food can bring anyone together. Maybe in this deal that they brokered, they had a treaty. So it was a contract that they had to enter in. You know what I feel like about words? Any words that start with C-O-N, it's not going to come out good for somebody. But here's the thing with the contract. Maybe that contract, someone didn't feel but they felt more at peace because there was the food element of everyone being able to celebrate at the end, because it was like a victory for both sides, right? So the celebrations that go behind food, I think that we can celebrate very righteous causes when it comes to food. Now, what are we going to do with the Thanksgiving outreach? Now, some religious people might say, well, you know what? Instead of buying all that money on food, spend all that money on food, you know what you guys need to do? I said, well, what? Well, you guys just need to, hey, how you doing? You guys just need to buy Bibles and literature and give tracts and stuff like that. Because if you bought literature and you gave tracts and stuff like that, then if you did that, then people would get saved and you wouldn't have had to spend all the money on that food. But what's wrong with that logic? What's the problem with the logic is this. If you just preach to a person, it's not that the message doesn't have a way of getting through without the food. It has a way of getting through better when you can take care of the food. Because here's the thing, is if you're hungry, if you are hungry, would we look at that would help us to be able to have better comfortability? Someone being able to give us food. How many of you ever been hungry and you needed someone to give you, or not needed someone, but it would be nice if they asked you to stay and eat? There was one time I was in, now this was month of November, I was in college, and normally they don't give you a long break during Thanksgiving. It's just like, at my school, I think that we got off Wednesday afternoon and we had to return on Monday. So with me living there, being all the way out here, I couldn't just come home for Thanksgiving. But the one Thanksgiving that I was away from family, that was the one time that I was affected by the feeling of knowing that there was millions of people that were spending this holiday all by themselves. I never knew people spent Thanksgiving by themselves. Why? Because I came from a loving environment to where we always celebrated that together. There was always lots of food. There was always lots of people around. But when I was away from home, what did I have to realize? I was by myself. Most of my friends, they went home to be with their own families. Most of us didn't have the money to be able to put on like a full Thanksgiving dinner. But what we did at that time is, I remember that there was a couple that was going to school with us at the time. They're a married couple, and they had a little house, and they were like, hey, we're going to have students come over to our house to eat with us on Thanksgiving Day.
Somebody please help me, this guy is possessed.
Hey, brother, you all right?
I'm okay.
No, we had literally left my house because he is possessed.
Hey, brother, all right.
Something is wrong with him.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Hey, brother, I'm going to talk to you in just a second. We're getting ready to close this out. I'm going to talk to you. All right, so here we go. So now, when we talk about food signatures, what happens with it? We see that it can create a good atmosphere, a good environment. Sometimes with foods, it can create some negativity that goes along with it, right? I remember there were things so when I was able to eat with this family, what are some of the emotions you think that came out at that time? Joy. You know, here's the love of God. Because I didn't have my biological family with me. God still looked out for me and raised up people that I could have that dinner with, right? Okay, so now, let's go to Genesis 21, verse 8, where it should be close, so someone read that real quick. Yes?
And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made great feasts of the same day that Isaac was weaned.
All right, so the birth of Isaac, what was that symbolic of? A miracle. This miracle child that came forth. So when the child, to honor the child's birth, what did they do? There was a feast set in place. Right? How many of you ever feasted with a pig?
How old are you?
Hey, bro, don't interrupt me. I'm working right now. I'll talk to you in a minute. Don't interrupt me now. The child, so there's different signatures that come with food. Now, when the child was at a certain age, they had a feast for that particular reason. Okay, somebody go to Luke 15, 23 and 24. I want to give you the paraphrase of this. Luke 15, 23 and 24. The wayward son, what did he do? He left the father's house. Okay? And he came back. The father didn't say, hey, where have you been? What have you been doing? The father said, let's do something special. Someone got Luke 15, 23 and 24.
And bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For my son was dead and is alive again. And he was lost and is found. And they began to be married.
All right, right on. Yes, okay. So here's the thing. He was dead, but now he is alive. So that was something to celebrate. To be able to celebrate someone's salvation, someone coming back. Someone you see them in a bad situation, and then seeing them now, all right, things that got better, things cleared up. So they celebrated. So what did they celebrate with? They got a calf, fattened calf. They killed it, and they celebrated, they feasted, and they had a good time. They didn't celebrate every day, but on what day? Everyone say special occasion.
Occasions.
Special occasions. So as we conclude, Pastor James, would you close out the service? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 27 and 28. And then you'll do the reading, or you'll do the prayer at the end. Sir, come on in here.
I don't want to be all up on you guys.
Okay, but just come on in here.
And if any of them that believe not
I don't
lead
believe.
you to a
Come on in,
feast,
young man.
and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat asking no question for conscience sake. But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not, for it is for his sake that showeth it, and for his conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. I'm going to go ahead and close with prayer. Amen. Father God, as we close out this night, Father God, we just thank you.
Yes, Lord.
Father God, we ask that you take and bless the message that's been brought before us tonight. That we realize when to feast and when not to feast. Father God, we just thank you, give you praise that you set things before us. You prepare a table before us.
Yes, Lord. Hallelujah.
And Father God, we just give you praise, honor, and glory for it all. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.